Кайырлы күн, құрметті ханым.
Distinguished guests, let me welcome you at our session of our next session on green growth in Kazakhstan. As you know, the main instrument of sustainable development is the green economy. So the types of activities, of economic activities related to production, processing, and distribution of goods and services that lead to improving living standards of people and in the long term, without affecting future generations to harmful impact and harmful impact on environment and environmental risks. The focus on green economy has enabled us to see the start of new technological revolution that is now replacing carbon-based and wasting energy. The concept of green economy enables comprehensive alignment and harmonical combination of economic, social, and environmental components. And the green economy model is actually supplements, but not replaces the sustainable development model. Currently, our speakers will talk to the following issues: the mechanisms of transferring clean technologies, combined investment and demonstrational projects for transferring to green economy and containing common issues, standards for green economy, sustainable energy, its accessibility and efficiency, adaptation to climate change and natural disasters, access, use of energy sources, use of renewable energy sources, efficient energy consumption, and fair and equitable access to all. And I suggest we do the following: 4 greetings, 5 minutes, and for speech, 6 minutes, because we have only 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we'll stay here. We spend 5 minutes for organizational issues. So let me, if you don't mind, start our session. So here in Kazakhstan, we know that who is responsible for energy and environment. This is the Ministry of Energy that actively works with the community and combines these two components, environment and energy. And I'm very happy to give floor to the Vice Minister of Energy of Kazakhstan, Mr. Sabit Nurlebayev, because with his appointment, our ministry has become much greener. So we are working very actively now in partnership on the Environmental Code of Kazakhstan. And we are introducing new principles, new approaches, according to the international standards and the best practices. That's why this is the big work that we are doing, that we are all engaged in, that all stakeholders. Sabit Nurlebayev, the floor is yours. Rahmet. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants of the panel session, on behalf of the Ministry of Energy, I would like to welcome you here, welcome our guests on behalf of the ministry. We are going to discuss the relevant issues of the green economy, renewable energy, this is our major priority, understanding of the importance of improving environment and saving environment. So this is a priority for us. In 2013, Kazakhstan has adopted a concept on transferring to green economy, implementation of which has already showed certain results. In general, in Kazakhstan, we see comprehensive work on improving national framework, legal framework. Our objective consists of adhering to international standards, OECD standards, on providing enabling environmental environment. And we are using the best international practices of environmental regulation. In 2017, the expert OECD has published a comprehensive overview of Kazakhstan, and environmental work has been one of the 4 issues for successful development of Kazakhstan. All the recommendations of this comprehensive country review were taken into account when we were developing our new environmental code. Many of people present here are members of our working group. Also, an important focus for us were the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and we are working on that too. As you know, the Ministry of Energy is responsible for. There are 5 groups, and the Planet Group on 5 SDGs, we are responsible for these 5. And we are doing a lot of work, and I would like to thank all the experts. This is the UN agencies and other international organizations, including OSCE, who actively participate in our working groups on SDGs. It's important to say that implementation update of legislation will become the foundation for technical re-equipment and improving competitiveness of local goods and services at international markets that will enable to get us additional economic growth and improve environmental investment climate, investment attractiveness, and will facilitate implementation of new projects. We have introduced those regulations that will enable us to transfer to the best available technologies. And I'm sure when we adopt the new environmental code, we will transfer systemically, stage by stage. We will get on the new rails. We will be able to use the best available technologies, and this will give a new impetus to the development and modernize the economy of Kazakhstan as a whole. In this regard, I would like to thank again our international partners, OECD, UN agencies, financial institutions that support us in improving environmental legislation. In our activities, we should focus on the fact that Central Asia represents a single nature complex that includes environmental zones located at areas of different country states. You know that, and we are very much concerned with ecosystems. We can say this is our Tian Shan Mountains, also the ecosystems of the Caspian Sea, the Aral Basin. And we are working with our neighbor states, and we should continue working together on that. Taken into account that consequences of negative environmental impact is important for all the countries, regardless of the borders, and this exacerbation will affect the whole region. That's why our joint work of Central Asian countries on improving this work, on resolving these issues, is very relevant. We are sure that the need for regional cooperation is needed in view of the growth of new environmental problems, and we need to consolidate our efforts on the most urgent environmental issues and sustainable development issues. For us, it's very important to hear the opinions of the leading international experts. And I'm sure the today event will make a contribution to the global process of sustainable development and support of all countries' efforts in their transition to sustainable economy for resolving environmental and social issues in Central Asia. Thank you for your attention. And I think we will have a productive session today. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sabit. You focused very importantly on expanding regional cooperation and getting to some consensus, because there is a good understanding that we are a single thing, not only in the world, but not only in the region, but only in the world. We, as the Association of Environmental Organizations, are always happy to cooperate, and I think NGOs and civil society understand that we need to work together and promote green economy, not only in Kazakhstan, but all over Central Asia. Thank you very much. And now I'm very happy to give floor to our long-term partner, a person who made a great contribution to the development of green growth, who is the Nobel Peace Prize winner of 2007. He is a chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Association of Environmental Organizations. In Kazakhstan, I am a chairwoman of the board. I would like to give the floor to Rai Kwon-chung, who is always willing to share his knowledge, who is very active, progressive, and making a huge contribution in the green economy development in Kazakhstan. Mr. Rai Kwon-chung, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me start by defining what we mean by green growth first, because I am the one who pioneered the green growth concept 13 years ago, or 14 years ago, 2005, from ESCAP. Actually, green growth sounds very simple, but it means very deep transformation of the relationship or interaction between economy and the people and the planet. Traditionally, until 1992, before we adopt sustainable development concept, we were only focusing on economic growth at the expense of using natural resources and using people as just an input for economic growth and GDP. But this paradigm is showing a lot of limitations, problems. That's why in 1992, Rio de Janeiro, in Earth Summit, we adopted the sustainable development as a new paradigm for the future. And even after, in 2015, how many years later, or 23 years later, we adopted the Sustainable Development Goal. And we talked a lot, even during this Astana Economic Forum, how we can achieve Sustainable Development Goals. But many people are emphasizing we should do a lot more effort, we should to push it, invest more in this SDG. But the question is, why the investment is not happening enough for SDG or green economy or green technology or renewable energy? Why investment is not happening enough? We have to think about it. The reason is very simple. The current economic paradigm is about short-term profit. But green growth, green economy, sustainable development, social inclusion, environmental protection, all these goals of sustainable development are long-term goals. It does not generate short-term economic profit right away. That's why investment is always has to go first for short-term projects, and they don't go enough for long-term projects like green growth and green projects or renewable energy projects. This is the fundamental dilemma of time gap between short-term and the long-term. So that's why the government has to play a very important role. Yesterday in the plenary, the very important Nobel laureate for economics, Paul Romer, he said, we are struggling on the definition of what is the proper role of government, whether minimalism of the government role or government should play an active role in pushing sustainable development or green economy. But it is getting clear that government has to play a more important role in pushing this priority transformation without changing this kind of transformation of relationship from trade-off between economy, people, and planet. We have to shift to win-win synergy between economy, people, and planet. When we invest in people and when we invest in planet, in the long run, even the economy will prosper. People are asking me, is there any proof? Yes, there are proof, a lot of proof. If we look at the Nordic European countries like Sweden, Finland, Norway, these countries invest in people. University education is free. Medical service is free. This means investment in people and investment in planet. Then in the long run, these countries are enjoying highest level of happiness, not just economic growth, but they are enjoying better jobs, high quality of life. So this is a proof that when we invest more in long term, then we can get the benefit in the long run. But the question is, how can you bridge the time gap between short term and long term? Here, the political leadership and the people's support is very critical. Because without people's support, no politicians will make long-term decisions. Look at the many democratic governments around the world. Some government, one of the biggest government in the world, is taking a very short-term view on climate change. And that they deny to take actions on climate change is influenced by short-term interest. They ignore long-term goals. So now, but I'm very happy to be a long-term partner of the Kazakhstan government and many of my friends here, that Kazakhstan has been always to be a leader of long-term change. And Kazakhstan has been adopting green economy concept, green growth concept, and the green bridge concept in 2010, and the G Global, which is promoting the global change and transformation. So I'm very happy to support Kazakhstan government of leading this kind of a global transformation. And the Astana Future Energy Expo 2 years ago, just over there, is a very important proof that Kazakhstan government is investing in long-term goals like green energy, renewable energy. So I'm very pleased to support the Kazakhstan government. And then before concluding, I would like to propose 3 very important concrete ideas how green growth of Central Asia and Kazakhstan can be stimulated. Number 1, my proposal. You can collaborate, Kazakhstan or Central Asian country can collaborate with China about Belt and Road Initiative, because Silk Road is going through these Central Asian countries. And the Belt and Road Initiative is opening up very important opportunity for exporting renewable energy from Kazakhstan to China and to Korea as well. Korea badly needs a lot of renewable energy to meet our target for renewable energy for 2030. So Korea is ready to import renewable energy. Kazakhstan can export it through China, through super grid connection already available in China. Korea is going to build a submarine cable from China to Korea by 2022. So this is not a dream. It can be done in a few weeks' time. So, but we need to have a very bold political leadership to achieve it. And secondly, I'd like to propose some idea about we have to change our perception of how we manage our waste. Nowadays, energy recovery from waste is becoming a very important source of renewable energy. Korea is generating 3% of our energy only from garbage. We are burning our garbage and using this energy for our heating and for our electricity. So this waste and garbage is now becoming a new source of renewable energy. As you know, our whole world suffering from garbage crisis. Everywhere we are suffering from garbage. But this garbage can be a source of new renewable energy. So on the one hand, we can solve the problem of garbage crisis, because it's damaging our environment. At the same time, we can generate energy from the garbage. You can solve two problems at the same time. So this can be a very important initiative of Kazakhstan as well. And I have many more ideas, but I will stop here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks very much to Mr. Chung. And I said that he's our old partner because all our strategic documents, he knows more about them than we, the Kazakhs, do. And this beautiful initiative and the great green partnership, Green Bridge project, Expo 2017 that we did, and very important suggestion that you did about integration fully into the idea or the initiative idea of Silk Way. Thank you very much. I think that this project super great that we will realize and integrate all Central Asian countries to become the supplier of energy for China, who needs it, and for Korea, for Pacific countries. And now I would like to give the floor to Tarek Amtaira. You know that United Nations is a leading and important organization that has paid a lot of attention to sustainable development. There is a Department of Energy, UNIDA, which mobilizes all knowledge and power and skills to facilitate the developing countries. Please take the floor, Tarek Amtair.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the host and organizers. I would also like to thank the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan for the invitation to be here in this very important forum. I think I would like to build on the intervention by Laureate Chung on the green growth as a paradigm shift in the economic logic or in the economic system. While initially the idea was put forward that we need an active government intervention to really make a transition to a green growth paradigm, we also fundamentally believe that we have to get the markets to work for green products and services. So markets need to function, which means that the trade in goods and services that deliver higher utility to citizens, but also with a lower environmental impacts, these need to work effectively in all markets for the green growth paradigm to take roots. In that perspective, if we really transfer the market for goods and services in the direction of green products and services or clean products and services, we are looking at huge business opportunity, a huge market of these services. One estimates, let's say, if we look at the clean technology and clean energy sector, some of the estimates look at the trading in the goods and services in the next 10 years in the range of about $6 trillion in the next 10 years in the trade of clean energy and clean, or would say climate-friendly products and services. The unfortunate situation is that the benefits from all of these opportunities from the market for green products and services are not evenly distributed. Most of the products and the technologies are knowledge intensive, which means that certain advanced economies reap the benefits from green products and services. So that's where we come in as a UN agency. We think that developing countries and emergent economies and middle-income countries like Kazakhstan can also create opportunities, business opportunities, for their economic sectors to benefit from the emergent green business and green or clean technology sector. And for that to work, you need to address some structural barriers in some of these economies. We don't see, as Mr. Chung highlighted, we don't see enough investments going into some of these sectors because either the market pull factors are not working or the support infrastructure for innovation, enterprises, SMEs, entrepreneurs in the sector, the support infrastructure is not effectively working. So we have to look at it in both sides. You have to look at what are the policies and incentives and measures that the government can undertake to create a market pull, and what are the support infrastructure that also the government can put in place to create an ecosystem around innovation and entrepreneurship for green growth, clean technology, environmental product and service sectors. So we have been working as a UN as a UN specialized agency. UNIDO we are concerned also with the idea of creating jobs, enterprise development. So from that perspective, we think that a systemic approach to tackling some of these barriers is needed by focusing on the ecosystem around entrepreneurs and by focusing on the policy environment that pull the market for green products and services. In that context, I was actually happy to say that we have, with the Ministry of Energy in Kazakhstan, recently have got the endorsement to start actually an experiment or a project here in Kazakhstan where we're looking at this ecosystem from all its aspects. So one is to look at how do we support small and medium enterprises, entrepreneurs and innovators to put their ideas into the marketplace, to create commercially viable solutions around the green growth paradigm. So that's one area. So that needs really to create an infrastructure for accelerating entrepreneurs, providing the kind of services that can help them translate ideas into commercially viable, investable business propositions. The second one is to look at the ecosystem as a whole, from the policies, the incentive mechanism to pull the market. So I look forward that we will work on this. We're currently in the design stage, but hopefully we can kickstart and we can see positive results from this effort beginning of 2020. With this, I thank you again, and it's a pleasure to be here and look forward to further discussion.
Спасибо большое.
Thank you very much to Mr. Tarek M. Taira. It's very important that you stress that we need the right infrastructure for greener economy, because by definition it goes without saying that we need infrastructure. So those barriers are present in the way of the development of a green business, and the inclusion of small and medium enterprises also has a huge significance. Otherwise, it will not have a good effect. Once again, thanks very much. I would like to give the floor to General Director of Darkhan Technology Development, Mr. Craig Smith, and I wanted to emphasize that he was the leader of National Laboratory with the Ministry of Energy of the United States, and he worked on renewable energy. Please take the floor, Mr. Craig Smith.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. And it's my honor and my privilege to be here, and I thank the Republic of Kazakhstan governments for the opportunity to share some of my thoughts on this very important subject. I represent, currently, I think at this conference, I'm representing the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, where I work and manage a very large research center, a science park where we have 20 large companies, primarily in the oil and gas sector, in the carbon sector. We have several renewable projects going on in the research center that I'll mention briefly. But I want to start by saying our research center, Dhahran Techno Valley, has an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with Astana Hub, and we're a collaboration and research partnership center. So we welcome students from around the world, we welcome students from Kazakhstan, and we look forward to future collaborations, particularly in the renewable energy sector here. So we'll look forward to further partnerships, MOUs, and agreements going forward. Saudi Arabia resides, we're not Central Asia, but I'm honored to be here sharing some thoughts about Saudi Arabia. I think there's a lot of synergy and a lot of potential for collaboration. Perhaps you know we reside 4 hours or so south of here by air. It's a country a little bit smaller than Kazakhstan, and we have 0 rivers, 0 water that flows, perhaps 1 centimeter of rain per year in the country. What this translates to is 365, almost 365 days of sun. The potential for Saudi Arabia's solar programs are tremendous. The potential for Saudi Arabia wind programs are also tremendous. I think Saudi Arabia resides 6th in the world in potential for sun, 13th in the world for wind. But there is one issue that needs to be clearly articulated. Saudi Arabia has 95% of its exports in the oil and gas sector, in oil and oil derivatives, 95%. His Excellency, the Minister of Energy, Khalid Falah, gives frequent talks around the world, and often he leads these talks by mentioning the renewable energy potential and the programs that are being funded by the government and many agencies being stood up to support alternative energy. He is convinced, like I'm convinced, that supply of Saudi oil and supply of global oil resources will outlive demand as technology takes over, alternatives and renewable energy, transportation alternatives become commonplace. There will not be a need for oil, and Saudi Arabia currently at production rates has about 70 to 72 years of oil reserves. So certainly within the next 30 to 40 years, Saudi Arabia realizes that oil may become obsolete. And this drives a renewable energy program that is tied into a grand vision, as many countries around the world have, the grand vision called Vision 2030, targeting a transformation of the economy sector. But as my distinguished colleague said a few moments ago, it's not only about economics, it's about creating a sustainable lifestyle for the people, improving wellness, societal factors that will encourage the youth of the country as they become leaders in Saudi Arabia and the world. It's important to note 70% of Saudi Arabia's population is under the age of 30. So this connects very well with an alternative mindset. And I think that Saudi Arabia can become a great case example globally of transitioning from an almost 100% oil-based economy into an alternative energy sector. There's currently 2 major projects under finance and under construction for a 300 megawatt solar facility in the north of the country and a 400 megawatt wind facility. As these come online and start to become developed, new technologies becoming commonplace, some of them being developed at our research centers, they will be the prototype for the youth that is coming online. This youth is well publicized as one of the world's most active on social media. They're well connected. Saudi Arabia may suffer a bit of perception from outside of the region, outside of the country, a negative perception with all of the activity going on in the Middle East. But I can tell you, as a foreigner living in Saudi Arabia for as long as I have never met kinder, more hospitable people, open to change and open to a vibrant future. So this ties in very nicely with their vision, with adopting and taking leadership in a renewable energy program. I'll stop here and appreciate again the opportunity to be here.
Спасибо большое, господин Смит. Действительно,
Thank you very much. Yes, Saudi Arabia is smaller than Kazakhstan, but the structures and economies are very close, very similar. So now it is going in the direction of technology, and it will try to use greener energy, supply greener energies. So thanks very much again. Now I'd like to give the floor to the Director of International Center of Green Technologies and Investment Projects, Rapil Joshibayev. This center was created recently, and it is aimed at integrating, connecting Central Asian countries in relation with green technology and the projects that will enrich and facilitate the green growth. Rafil Joshibayev, please take the floor.
Уважаемые участники,
Dear participants of Economic Forum, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, G Global. First of all, this panel is very much needed right now, and it has a big interest. Our center was created just 1 year ago. The idea was created by the first president of Kazakhstan, Yelbasi, who announced that at the Assembly of UN in 2015, we facilitate global sustainable development through promoting of principles and standards of green growth at the national and regional level. Our goal is to become regional platform to attract investments, to accelerate the introduction of green technology and exchange of information and knowledge through education and transfer of technology, and facilitate the cooperation between countries in that direction. As the practice shows, when we combine efforts, we have the synergy, we get the synergy, and the area of technological development is one of the key trends for the whole Central Asian countries. Countries with very good, comfortable conditions and good conditions for business who have achieved many things. These are the countries like the United States, Canada, European Union, China, Japan. These economies are known for their growth, sustainable, renewable energy, and investments. For us, countries of Central Asian countries, we need to work on green innovations and promote those initiatives. In a region, we need to evaluate the most important internal barriers for the development of technology. So we need to encourage the neighbors to develop the plan for green economy and transfer of latest technology, improvement the level of investments, and the adoption of legal base for the development of green economy. We need to evaluate the risks for Central Asian region. We need to use the leverage the partnership of Green Bridge project, which is being realized as part of the President's program, and 16 countries are the part of this project. Also, some network organizations, regional projects aimed at solving specific eco-environmental problems of regions in Central Asia. For example, the problem of Aral Lake, the provision of cheap energy, then solving the issues of desertation. Our center is a central coordination center for European problems and water resources. As part of these activities, we started, along with experts from European Union, we started training seminars, workshops about air, water, and development of tight cooperation in countries of Central Asia. We offer expert accompanying of the countries within the green growth, along with the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. This will allow us to determine the strategies and plans towards greener future. And the center has signed contracts with 30 partners. We've contacted big countries like OSCE, UN, UNEP, ESCATO, ARENA, and financial institutions like World Bank, EBRD, Asian Bank of Development. We are holding talks with different organizations to implement new programs in Central Asia. The global program of cleaner technology, UNIDA, we're working with that organization. We are participating in sustainable development projects that was said by the Vice Minister. The Center supports regional initiatives in China. I'm sorry, we have a limit of time. So all these initiatives, I would like to go over them a little bit. And in Kazakhstan, is doing a lot in this direction. We have over 180 patented green technologies, and we facilitate the introduction of these technologies, and we explore the issues, and we want to make a small Silicon Valley in Kazakhstan. And all these suggestions that have been voiced here, we support here, and we spoke about super grid initiative in China. Now we're having active negotiations. We created a working group, so I want to say that our center is open for cooperation, and all your suggestions and initiatives will be looked at, and we're ready for cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Yes, we all know the main keywords. This is cooperation. This is the urge for joint work on technologies transfer, so that there are reference materials about such technologies, so that we could actively exchange experience among countries. And actually, we are behind the schedule, so I will be asking you to say just the key words. And I would like to give floor now to the Deputy Director of Energy Efficiency and Climate Change Department of EBRD, Mr. Vincenzo Duihauer. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having the opportunity to share some thoughts on the topic of today's event. It's a pleasure to be here in Nur-Sultan. It's my first time in Nur-Sultan, but it's certainly not my first time in Kazakhstan, nor my first time at this forum. It's also a pleasure to see some of our partners here at the panel, Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Energy, with whom we've been cooperating very closely, the AIFC, with whom we've also been working for a number of years. I also have the pleasure to be on their Green Finance Council. Today, I wanted to talk to you a bit about finance, because I think, given today's topic on green growth, investments are clearly a very important factor in this question. And I wanted to share some very brief findings of a joint study we did with AIFC a couple of years ago on the actual needs that Kazakhstan, the investment needs that Kazakhstan has to actually meet its Paris Climate Agreement commitments up to 2030. So this study concluded that for Kazakhstan to meet this contribution, an additional 7 billion of green investment would have to be invested in Kazakhstan every year up until 2030. And for Central Asia, the figure is about 11.5 billion. So this gives a bit of a sense of the challenge that Kazakhstan and the region has on this matter. So what do we do at the EBRD to support Kazakhstan and broader region in meeting this challenge? So at the EBRD, environmental issues and also climate change is very much at the heart of the mandate that we have as a multilateral development bank. So since our inception in 1991, environmental issues and climate change have been very much part of some of the key topics that we push for at the bank. And in 2015, we adopted our most recent initiative on this matter, which is called the Green Economic Transition Approach, under which we've taken upon ourselves to, by 2020, have 40% of our overall annual investments meet the criteria for green investment. So this is the commitment that we've taken on upon ourselves as a multilateral development bank. Last year, we were at 36%. So I think we're getting there. It's very encouraging. In Central Asia, we've invested about 3 billion euros in green projects since 2006. Kazakhstan about 2. It's clearly not anywhere near the 7 billion or the 11.5 billion that I mentioned, but it's at least a start. So how do we make these investments? I just want to give some sense of what we see the key components of making these investments. I think first of all, of course, it's finance. It's our own investments, but it's also very much supporting other actors to make the investments. So we think there's a key role for the private sector to make these investments. So these investments are also supported, and we try to sort of take a leading role in making the investments and bringing private investors in as well. The second very important component is, of course, the regulatory framework, and it was already mentioned at a couple of interventions today, is that we support very much the governments to put in place policy and regulations that actually support these kind of green investments, and that's why we work very closely with the various ministries on this topic. Thirdly, it's bringing in concessional financing, so it's clear that for some investments, a purely commercial approach is not viable, and you need some more concessional finance from the likes of the Green Climate Fund or the Global Environmental Facility or bilateral donors to come in and support these kind of investments. So that is also a very key component of what we do. And then fourth, or lastly, is the technical assistance. So we use all this donor funding to support technical assistance assignments, on policy dialogue, on preparing investments, on risk assessment or studies to support these kind of initiatives going forward. So to give a very specific example of an engagement that we've had really over the last 10 years in this area, this has been our engagement in Kazakhstan on renewable energy sector, which really started in 2009 when Kazakhstan adopted its first law on renewable energy. And since then, we've worked with the ministry and with other stakeholders in putting in place the regulations, improving the legal frameworks to put in to support these investments. And what we've seen that after this work, since 2014, investments have really picked up in the renewable energy sector, as I'm sure you're aware. So this is something very encouraging, which shows that if we put in place the right regulatory framework, these investments can really take off. So since 2014, we've supported 11 renewable energy projects for about 500 million of EBRD finance, approximately $750 million total finance. And this will bring about 500 megawatts of additional renewable energy capacity to Kazakhstan. Very important has been the role of donors. We've worked with the Clean Investment Funds and are now very closely working with the Green Climate Fund, who's contributing 110 million to this initiative from their side. And we find it very encouraging what we see happening in Kazakhstan, because what we've seen is that while the first investments have mostly been by the likes of Samruk and some local investors. What we see now is that foreign private companies from the likes of France, from China, and from other parts of the world are really starting to invest in this sector. So for us, it's a very good case study in what we can bring in terms of green investments. So just to conclude, I think I was also asked to provide a recommendation of what I see is some of the key factors to further support green growth and regional cooperation in Central Asia and Kazakhstan. I think it's really what I've already mentioned. At the EBRD, we think that the role of the private sector is key. And the only way to get the private sector involved in these kind of investments is to make sure that the government puts in place the regulations and the legal framework, both in terms of regulations, but also in supporting these kind of investments. And in that sense, it's very encouraging that we see Kazakhstan moving to an auctioning scheme for renewables, which we feel is a very good step in that direction. And of course, also the role of donors is very important in this area, because if you have clear commitment from the government, then it's also easy, and you have a good policy framework, it's also easier to show to the donors that it's worthwhile for them to make this kind of commitment, because as we all know, their budgets and their financial means are limited, so they need to ensure that when they give this kind of concessional loans or other support, they need to make sure that actually finance actually comes with that. So I think those were just some thoughts I wanted to share, and thank you again for having the opportunity to be on this panel. Thank you. Ahmed.
Спасибо большое, господин.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dunhauer. It's very important that you focused on the challenges that Kazakhstan is facing, especially on meeting the commitments of Paris Climate Agreement, and that you were very clear in showing the mechanisms of your EBRD support to all Central Asian countries, including Kazakhstan. And that big investment is needed, yes, we understand that, and the legal framework is needed to be adjusted. And I would like to give next floor to Mr. Guy Eames, who is our long-term partner as well, who's been working in Kazakhstan. And green construction, practical implementation of projects for green economy, and cooperation with Eurasian Economic Union, and also to the Managing Director of Environmental Construction.
Thank you very much to G Global for inviting me here, giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you very much to the government of Kazakhstan. It's really an outstanding forum, amazing speakers, really good topics, and I feel really good, really a lot of progress. It's the third time I've been here. I represent the Russian Green Building Council, which is part of a global movement for professionals working in green building and green building technologies in 102 countries. Данный секция должен быть практический.
There should be practical recommendations. That's why I will switch to Russian. I've been working for 10 years in Russia for support of new technologies in green construction. Since Sochi, Olympic Games in Sochi, we've been supporting that. My personal role is to initiate new program that will speed up the growth in this industry, and we're working with developing companies and the government. Next slide, please. Why environmental construction? We talk a lot about green economy. As we know, there are there is an environmental crisis, and our industry uses 40% of energy in any country. About 40% of energy is consumed by construction and by housing buildings. buildings. 40% of waste is also comes from construction. 90% of time we spend inside in the buildings, at home or in the office. 90% of our time is inside. When we talk about energy efficiency and how much can be saved, this is important. But besides, there is also productivity issues, labor productivity. And we heard the talk of the president yesterday, and this is related to buildings and whether the building is environmental. Environmental construction is central to green economy. And the last thing, why it is important, we said that there are 280 green technologies can be implemented in new environmental buildings. This could be a locomotive, a driving factor for innovations. I would like to present 6 trends. I have selected 6 trends and our solutions. What can we do in Kazakhstan? I think we all know about the digital economy trend and BIM, Building Informational Management. So how can we track the materials located in any building? Any building consists of tons of materials. And if we would like to introduce a cyclical economy, that's important issue how to reuse the materials so that they would be perpetually used. Second trend, this is the labor productivity. As we said yesterday, this is an important topic. How can we increase labor productivity? We've been talking very little about how buildings affect labor productivity. So, we need a good ambience so that we could think well and listen well and be efficient. But very often in the buildings, people are not productive. They are falling asleep or getting sick, getting a headache. So this is also very important if we can improve that. Third, demonstration buildings. Seeing is believing. If we see the building of the future, this will change our approaches. We have showed here 2 examples. Last week I was in the Netherlands. Deloitte has built a new office for them as an example of super environmental building. Everyone can come in and see different technologies. ABN AMRO Bank built a new conference center for receiving guests in Amsterdam by using only recycled materials. Fourth trend, environmental buildings for students. Students, our new, the future staff, they should see. So this is environmental construction is a part of curriculum for students. We have just introduced such educational programs in 6 universities in Russia. Smart life construction centers, where students learn how to install solar panels and thermal pumps. As the previous speaker said, I would like to also talk about how we can cooperate between the owners of environmental buildings and the users. How should be the reporting structure arranged? There is an organization called GRESP that connected almost 80,000 buildings. And so their indicators are being constantly monitored. And the last trend, how the new technology is changing construction and how it is important for construction companies and developing companies, such as prefabricated production, prefabricated construction, where building is not built. Everything is done on a plant. New buildings, new technologies are used and are installed 3 times quicker. Our Chinese colleagues can actually tell you a lot about that. Guy, I'll have to stop you because we are going to have a next session here. I think you said the most important things. We yesterday talked a lot about human capacity. If I have 1 minute, I would like to tell you that we have a proposal how to introduce these proposals in Kazakhstan. Could you please send this in the writing? Yes, I will do that. I will do that. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And most important is Rapid Sihanovic heard you. He is a head of the Green Technologies International Center. So I think that's his work. This is one of the components. Next floor I would like to give to Managing Director of the Astana International Financial Center, Aidar Kazabayev. So I will talk in a nutshell. Listening to the speakers, as Mr. Craig said, Emirates are investing a lot, although they are a absolutely oil-based economy. I've been to Abu Dhabi on Green Economy Summit, and the greatest companies had said that oil for sustainable development. Just imagine, in Kazakhstan, we have heads of Kazmunaygaz, Aktobemunaygaz, of the largest oil companies. That's impossible. So that they come together and say, let's create voluntarily a fund of new technologies. That's just, I cannot imagine this. And in the Emirates, that actually happened. So I think we have different models of the economy. The share of renewables in Kazakhstan is a little bit more than 1%. In other countries, it's more than 70%. So when we say that Iceland, Singapore are the leaders on the happiness index and education index, their renewables share is 70%. So the renewables is actually the indicator of the state development. So when any investor, last year I saw a presentation from Finland about investment, and they said, we are the first in the world on water purity, air quality, and the renewables share is 70%. Kazakhstan, when we do presentations, we say, I have lots of minerals in Kazakhstan. I have big neighbors, Russia and China, and doing business, I'm at 30th in the rating. And the question to investors, where you will invest? To where neighbors, China and Russia, and doing business rating, or where the country declares that they have clean air and clean water. So in this context, why it happens like this? Because we have different models of economy.
Model of line economy with production, consumption, and recycling and burial. The world that we live in after consumption goes to recycling and the second consumption. So we don't have this measure. So what the government is doing is based on old line when the product is buried and the waste dams grow. So about 2% of the waste we experience an increase. So we want to discuss the revision of economic model of Kazakhstan, and this is about the changes, big changes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very big speech. So all these processes that are happening in Kazakhstan, it is very needed. So this is a look from the top. So the model needs to change. So new code will give impetus and momentum. I'd like to give the floor to Rahimbiet Timirkulovna, Chairman of the Board of the Coalition for Green Economy and Global Development, member of the Council on the Transition to a Green Economy, reporting to the President of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Progressive, very advanced woman who pushes different ideas that all countries need to also facilitate and grow. We have very little time, so dear audience, let me welcome you on behalf of the organizers. It's a traditional green session that has become an integral part of Astana Economic Forum. I wanted to thank Serik for continuing to organize these kinds of events. We are an oil country, but in 2013, by adopting green economy policies, we have international cooperation in Central Asia. The next country was Kyrgyzstan that was adopted this policy. The next country that Uzbekistan was the next country. So by 2025, in the total energy balanced, about 25% energy will be taken from renewable sources. All these countries are implementing these different programs. So I want to say that the Central Asian countries, there are many Kazakh ecologists that we welcome you to. So as part of these programs, we have good cooperations. So the new field will be a realization of new programs and the inclusion of all countries to the Parisian agreement. I will get to specific suggestions. We spoke about Green Bridge. Chung is one of the founders and authors, so he also always participates in our program. We need to reload this program. 16 countries have signed, and non-NGOs also participating there. So we're now thinking about creating a regional hub for green economy to develop and expand our cooperation. And in that regard, in developing that initiative, we suggested contest among the media to popularize projects, achievements. Then the next project is Green Office. Building is one factor, but we need our old buildings to turn them into real buildings and recover them. Next, it's the development of green finance. Aidar, thank you very much, because it has to be the facilitator of green finance. Many projects have to be realized. Green investments are important. You said it very well. You said that financial institutions, they say about their projects, and for business, it's the message is that we need to realize green projects from brown technologies, companies, and financial and international to finance these projects. Creating social platform is the next thing. The voice of ecologists is heard in many countries, and this potential needs to be developed. So Astana Economic Forum is the real proof that by creating these platforms, not only we can speak at them, but we can figure out new ways. Then the creation of new programs to reduce H2 carbohydrate H2 emissions. But we need to build the right system in in quotas. Then energy integration, digitalization. We said a lot about one belt, one way, Silk Way. In these projects, the green component in those projects is very important. If we can use the potential of Central Asian in United Arab Emirates, 365 days it is sunshine, but in our neighboring countries we also have countries like that. So the centers for renewable technology, which become the facilitators, and we can attract new technology, and together we can increase the volume of renewable energy in the total energy balance, and that would make our economies more competitive. In that regard, we have good platform. We have to develop that. And at 2 o'clock, we'll start another session related to innovation in women in economics and business, and we will offer our initiatives as women of the Silk Way. They will contribute to the greener economy. So did you feel the drive and the energy that the Sultanate has injected in us? So she thanked Serik Nurgulbekovich as the organizer of this platform and one of the people who inspired that event. So, just 2 words, Serik. I can leave my place, maybe. Give my place. Dear colleagues, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to thank Aygul Sakatjimbikovna for moderating this session. Then I would like to announce very good information. The second forum, One Belt, One Way, finished its work. As a result of this forum, G Global became the biggest project of the One Road, One Belt, One Way, together with Eurasian Economic Union as biggest institutions of European Union. There are 3 suggestions to organize different meetings. So this memorandum was signed by 40 leaders, by 40 countries. It's a very serious memorandum. We are now negotiating the 3rd forum so that it's held in China. Other countries can also get the torch from us. What Sultanate said, we plan to create association of leaders of Silk Way countries. This process is going. We're forming Silk Way project. We are integrating scientists, higher education. Now Sultanate also wants to lead the integration, the process of the integration of women of Silk Way. This process is already going. I suggest that we create organization of Green Silk Way countries. This initiative comes from Kazakhstan. So I think that association of these countries, Kazakhstan can lead this association, can lead this organization. The nations of the Silk Way are also integrating for the unity of the countries and to actively realize One Belt, One Way initiative. Thanks very much. I would like to thank everybody and announce the end of this session. Oh, good luck.